Morning, everybody. Tories trounced Lib Dems are very happy this morning. They've won an unexpected by-election victory from the Conservatives. Sarah Green overturned a majority of more than 16,000 in Chesham and Amersham, which is in Buckinghamshire, a seat which has been held by the Tories since 1974. This is the final result for you. You can see Sarah Green is now the MP for Chesham and Amersham with a majority of just over 8,000. And the share shows that huge win by the Lib Dems with 56.7% of the vote compared to 35.5% for the second place Tories, a reversal from the 2019 general election. The Lib Dem vote share was up more than 30 points. Conservatives, Greens and Labour were all down. Here's our political correspondent Rob Powell.
Liberal Democrats, 21,517 votes.
A huge win in the Conservative home counties, overturning a chunky and sustained Tory majority and winning comfortably by 8,000 votes. This is a stunning victory for the Lib Dems. In the heart of true blue suburbia, a stone's throw from the Prime Minister's constituency.
We will continue the work of holding this government to account for letting COVID rip through the care homes. We will speak up for the 3 million people excluded from financial support throughout the pandemic. And we will challenge Boris Johnson to be far more ambitious in tackling climate change.
As counting began, there had been rumours of a tight race, but even the Lib Dems will be surprised by the size of their win in this by-election, called after the death of former MP Dame Cheryl Gillan. The constituency has been Conservative since its creation in 1974, with Tories representing the area for far longer than that. The losing candidate left licking his wounds.
It's an absolutely extraordinary result, which must take into account the fact that the Liberal Democrat Party didn't just throw the kitchen sink at this constituency. I think it was the microwave, the table, the oven, the dishwasher, the dog, the cat and anything else that was lying around as well.
In affluent Buckinghamshire, on the fringes of London, Chesham and Amersham is, for many, the definition of a leafy Tory stronghold. But a mix of local and national concerns have formed a potent cocktail for the Lib Dems here. The area voted comfortably to remain in the EU, while the high-speed 2 rail link is a big concern, alongside proposed changes to the planning rules. The Lib Dem leader says this shows amid a focus on levelling up in the north, the Tories are ignoring the south. Whether this is a genuine realignment or just a mid-term protest vote, the win here is one of the most surprising by-election results in recent history and will worry those in Tory ranks already concerned that in a bid to win new supporters in the north, the government is taking for granted their traditional strongholds in the south. Rob Powell, Sky News.
Kit Malthouse for the government joining us now. Good morning to you, Mr Malthouse. Thanks for taking the time. What on earth has happened in Amersham?
Well, it's obviously very disappointing. Can't pretend anything otherwise. Really sad for our fantastic candidate, Peter Fleet. I was there myself just a couple of days ago, knocking on doors for him. We'll obviously have to have a fairly significant post-match analysis and understand what has actually gone on. And I suppose, you know, traditionally it's always tough for governments, whatever, 11 years in, mid-term to win a by-election. But, you know, there are lessons there for everybody, and no doubt they'll become clear in the days to come.
Are you ignoring the home counties, as is the allegation, in favour of creating a new base up north?
Well, as a home counties member of parliament myself, I don't think we are, no. And it's worth pointing out that only just a month ago, we had fantastic results across the home counties in local election results. Certainly in my own home borough of Basingstoke and Dean, we took the borough from no overall control with a fairly resounding victory, had a clean sweep across the board in the county. So, you know, there's some complex things going on there, which I think we'll need to understand. And no doubt people at party headquarters will be focusing on the result and trying to understand how we can win Chesham and Amersham back at the next opportunity.
30-point swing is embarrassing, though, isn't it?
Well, look, it's tough and disappointing, as I say. We would have hoped for a better result. Can't pretend anything otherwise. But, you know, we've seen this by-election phenomenon in the past. Our job now is to win back the trust of the people in that lovely part of Buckinghamshire and make sure at the next opportunity we resoundingly win it back.
What is it about politicians when they always say it's a phenomenon when a by-election doesn't go their way, and yet it's the course of politics in the United Kingdom when it goes your way?
Well, no, I don't think that is the case. I mean, everybody looked at the last by-election and thought that was a fairly extraordinary thing, midterm. Traditionally, midterm, it's been difficult for governments to win by-elections. People feel the need to make a protest. This is an unusual one. I said it's disappointing, and we'll need to understand what was going on there. As your report said, your package said, obviously, people very concerned about HS2. Bit odd because, of course, the Liberal Democrats, big supporters of HS2. So what's that telling us? We need to understand those things in the days to come. And no doubt that analysis will be done. I mean, we control local government pretty much in the area, pretty resoundingly. I think 26 out of the 27 councils are Conservative in that area. And so, there are obviously lessons to be learned, and that's what we'll try and do.
You are Policing and Crime Minister, which is, of course, why we'd like to speak to you more seriously this morning, if I can put it that way. The rape review, that is appalling reading, isn't it? And charities and victims groups are saying that what you're suggesting to try and fix it lacks urgency and is underfunded. Why do you think that's not the case?
Well, it's obviously a shocker. I mean, as we've said in the report and on the media and elsewhere, it's a source of deep regret and shame that the numbers have dropped so significantly over the last few years. The reasons for that are complicated, and what we've tried to do in the report is tease them out, but then put in place a structure, a set of proposals, which we believe stand the best chance of driving significant change as quickly as possible. Now, one of the challenges in doing so is obviously we're dealing with very large operational situations, big police forces, the Crown Prosecution Service, the courts, all of whom are operationally independent. We have to respect their decision-making on charge, prosecution, how they conduct themselves in court, but at the same time, apply, policy and pressure to try and get significant change in this area. And while I understand groups are naturally impatient, and we're very sorry for what's happened over the last few years, they're naturally impatient for change. My experience tells me, after 20 years in public policy delivery, that actually building from a strong base, starting with a focused set of proposals, is most likely to get us change in the short term.
Where do you stand on victims having to hand in their phones when they make an allegation, and when it needs to be searched after an attack, their phone, to see what's on it? Campaigners are calling that a digital strip search.
Yeah, so one of the challenges of modern crime fighting has been the advent of the smartphone and the vital role it plays in investigations. And that's not just rape and sexual assault investigations, where it's very important, but no murder in this country is solved without mobile phone data now being interrogated. And our technology to do that is not fast enough. Very often victims, sadly, are asked to surrender their phones for too long. It's too intrusive. It has an impact on them and their willingness to continue with the prosecution. And so what we're going to try and do is get to a situation where no victim goes without their phone for more than 24 hours. And if they are, we can offer them a replacement phone so that they can communicate and do what they need to do. And also that the interrogation of the data on that phone is very restricted through new guidelines, such that the evidence that's followed is only that which is pertinent to the case. And what we hope is that naturally intrusive inquiry can be less burdensome, and therefore victims are more likely to stick with the case.
Okay. You're working from home, I think, this morning. Yep, you are.
I am, yeah.
Yeah. Talk to me about working from home come the 19th of July or whatever date that is. How would you feel if your staff, your civil servants, said that they wanted to continue to work from home ad infinitum?
Well, obviously, this is a situation for employers and employees to discuss and negotiate themselves. I mean, I know there's been some media about this over the last 2 or 3 days, and we don't have any intention to make it compulsory to return to the office. Our manifesto at the last election did contain a pledge to consult on, more flexible working, to allow people to work from home should they wish to, and we'll be doing that later on this year. But, I think most situations, and as a small business person myself in the past, most of these situations can be sorted out between employers and employers. I have to say, though, from a personal point of view, one of the things I think we all need to bear in mind is it's very hard for young people coming up through an organization to learn remotely. to interact with their seniors and to learn from them and get nuance and have those casual conversations which help with their training and their skill set, very hard remotely. And I'm sure employers will be taking that into account.
Okay, so in answer to my question, you would be happy if your civil servants wanted to work from home going forward or not?
Well, it depends. So quite a lot of them are very keen to come in for particular meetings and meet in person, and we're doing that at the moment. When I was a minister at DWP, for example, we did have remote offices, people in Sheffield and Nottingham and other areas, and they would dial into meetings remotely. I think it's horses for courses, Kay. And I think, in a modern world where we've got this amazing ability to communicate with each other, I mean, this stuff was the stuff of Star Trek when I was a kid, right? That now we've got these ability to communicate electronically. There are situations where it's appropriate and there are others where it's not. And that's for employers to work out in the same way that you do when you're doing interviews, right?
OK, let me canter through another couple while I've got you. Can you rule out early release of lockdown on the 5th of July?
So, look, this is a decision, obviously, for the Prime Minister and the Quad of Ministers, and they're looking at the data as we go. Nobody wants to stay in lockdown any longer than we need to, and I know that they'll be looking carefully at the numbers over the days and weeks to come to see what can be done.
OK, just while I've got you, can you see, we're just talking about technology, can you see me on your screen at the moment?
I can, yes.
OK, have a look at this. Hancock?
Do you believe that the Health Secretary is hopeless? No comment at all? No? No comment.
We're not really going to answer that.
Okay.
That was a bit awkward, wasn't it?
Well, it's an incredibly unfair question, if I'm honest with you. I mean, Simon Stevens is a civil servant. It's not his job to offer good or bad appraisals of ministers. As he said, I think, later on the clip, it's a political question. And I think putting him on the spot like that is a bit unfair, if I'm honest with you.
He could have just easily, he's a civil servant, but he's also politically adept. He could have said, he's sensational. We couldn't have done it without him, but he didn't.
Yeah, well, if he'd said that, he would have been slammed as well for not being impartial. The British civil service are naturally impartial and don't want to stray across the line into matters of political questions, and particularly where personalities are involved. So I don't blame him for trying to avoid that question. I think it was a bit unfair to put him on the spot, personally.
OK, we'll have to agree to disagree on that one. Let me see whether we agree to disagree on this one. Front page of the Times this morning saying that you're going to allow 2,500 VIPs into the country for Euro 2020 UEFA FIFA officials. They're not going to have to quarantine. They're not going to have tests, or that's my understanding. How can that be fair on other people who either do have to quarantine in hotels or at home and then have to have these PCR tests at great expense, or perhaps can't even go on holiday at all?
Yeah, well, Kay, I haven't seen the detail of that particular proposal. One of the things we are trying to do, though, is obviously accommodate the Euros as much as we possibly can. And while much of the concern around coronavirus regulations has been about, whether one situation is fair compared to another situation, what we're generally trying to do is make difficult decisions about the path of a virus at the same time as trying to enable the ordinary operation of very special events like the Euro. And no doubt, the health professionals and the immigration professionals at the Home Office and then the senior ministers who make this decision will take all of that into account as we proceed. I mean, look, it's a great competition. We're very lucky to have it. We're trying to make it happen with as much kind of satisfaction all around as we possibly can. And that will be taken into account in the decision over the next few days.
Who are you supporting tonight, England or Scotland?
Oh, well, I'm an Englishman, so I'll be supporting England. But look, it's great that we've got home nations in the competition.
Okay.
All so far doing well, but I can't pretend other than to support the English team, I'm afraid.
Okay, I thought I'd bowl an underarm for you at the end. It's good to talk to you, Kit Malthouse. Thanks very much indeed for joining us. Thank you.
Thanks, Kay. See you soon.
See you. Bye-bye. Thank you. Oh, I like that. Still to come on the programme for you this morning, the First Minister of Wales announces a 4-week pause to the country's roadmap out of lockdown. We'll speak to Mark Drakeford, and that's at 7:45. Following that highly critical report into rape investigations, we'll talk to Jess Phillips. She's the Shadow Minister for Domestic Violence. That's at 8:05. After an investigation revealed the Manchester Arena bombing could have been prevented. We'll speak with the father of the youngest victim. That's at 8:15. After less than a month in office, Edwin Poots has resigned as leader of the DUP. It follows an internal revolt against him by MPs and members of the Northern Ireland Assembly. Joining us now is from Stormont, I think he is in Belfast. There he is this morning. David Blevins, of course. Hi, David. Good morning to you. They didn't think that through, did they?
Well, what an extraordinary story. When we were talking yesterday morning, Kay, it was about a breakthrough that we thought would secure the devolved government at Stormont. 24 hours later, the DUP have removed their leader after just 3 weeks in the job, and power sharing yet again hangs by a thread. All eyes are on one man today. That's Paul Givan. He was Edwin Poots' nominee to become First Minister of Northern Ireland and took up office yesterday. Now, the leader survived for 21 days. The new First Minister might end up surviving just 1 day, because it's very difficult to see how his position right now remains tenable. It was Edwin Poots' decision to nominate Paul Givan, despite the majority of his MPs and members of the Stormont Assembly asking him not to, that led to the party officers' last night meeting and to him deciding it was time to throw in the towel. And the other big question that now arises is who succeeds Edwin Poots. Just a few weeks ago, there was a leadership contest. He won it by 19 votes to 17, and the man he defeated, Sir Geoffrey Donaldson, who leads the DUP at Westminster, is now front runner to become the party's third leader in the space of 2 months.
OK, for now, thank you. Thanks a lot. Looking at some of the other stories making news this morning. All adults are now eligible to book their coronavirus vaccination. Anyone aged over 18 is now being urged to arrange their jab. Polling has opened in Iran's presidential election. Ebrahim Raisi, the head of Iran's judiciary and a hardline ally of the supreme leader, Ayatollah Khomeini, is the current favourite to win after several moderate candidates were barred from running. Police say a Greek man has allegedly confessed to killing his British wife in Athens weeks after he claimed that she had been killed by burglars. Police sources told Sky News after analysing smartwatch data, a tracker contradicted Charalambos Anagnastopoulos' claim that he had been tied up and instead showing him moving around the house after the attack. One of football's oldest rivalries resumes at Wembley later on today, with the match having huge implications for both England and Scotland's Euro 2020 hopes. Gareth Southgate's England squad will qualify for the knockout stage with a win, while Scotland are seeking to keep their hopes of progressing alive. Thousands of Scotland fans have already arrived in London ahead of tonight's clash, despite pleas to stay away. James Matthews reports.
Just like old times, the Tartan Army, Wembley bound, and Scotland desperately seeking a result.
Go ahead, come on! We are leaving proud Caledonia.
In Edinburgh, this was journey's start, where even a train trip needs a team talk.
Bonnie Scotland!
The road to Wembley rekindles age-old rivalries.
It does get the hairs on the back of your neck moving, especially once you're in that stadium. Nowadays, we allow the English fans to come to Wembley as well, and it's not just full of Scottish fans.
It's the magic of seeing Scotland playing against your oldest competitor.
I'd like it to go well. I think it will. I've got my hopes set, so yeah, I think it'll go well.
We really need to get right in there from the word go. I predict a 2-1 win to Scotland.
We are moving!
Scotland fans have travelled to London by rail, road and air. Up to 20,000 are expected to be in the city, but only 3,000 have tickets for the stadium. London's Mayor Sadiq Khan had appealed to Scots not to travel without a ticket or a safe place to watch the game. A fit again, Kieran Tierney was among the Scotland players who trained before heading south yesterday. Without at least a point from tonight's game, he and they will return north, contemplating an early exit.
We hope to start just as quick as England do. We'll go out there, we'll try and get on the front foot as early as possible, we'll try and get a hold of the ball, we'll try and make the players will try and make themselves feel comfortable on the pitch, on the stage, and if we can get off to a quick start, that'll be good for us.
After their opening win over Croatia, England start tonight as hot favourites, even if their manager is playing it cool.
Our objective is qualification, so that's what we've got to focus on. I thought in the past we've done that well. I thought we did that very well on Sunday. You know, Sunday was a big occasion for everybody.
It is the great Wembley pilgrimage, a place where Scots have enjoyed some of their finest football moments. The Tartan Army has long felt a sense of belonging here for itself and for this fixture. For them, football's coming home from home. James Matthews, Sky News, Edinburgh.
Walking through London last night, there were Scotland fans absolutely everywhere. The team can certainly count on their support this evening. You'll remember us following these Chinese elephants. Here they come a little earlier on in the week. Well, we've been following them for a couple of weeks now, haven't we? There we are. They're on the move again. A group of 15 elephants have been travelling around southern China for more than a year now, covering some 310 miles from their home on a wild reserve in Yunnan, all the way to Kunming, which is the provincial capital and home to 7 million people. Drone footage shows the elephants helping themselves to crops, and flapping their ears to cool themselves down. Later, one of the elephant calves can also be seen opening up a well for a drink, which is very naughty. There he is. But yeah, they're all having a fantastic time, flapping their ears to keep themselves cool. And there he is trying to get a drink. And a little bit of a dust bath as well. They do that to keep themselves, they cake it on, and it's a bit like sunscreen for them. Did you know that elephants can communicate from more than 2 miles away? A bit like me and Naz. Here's Naz. Hello, Naz. Good morning.
Say I'm an elephant. I'm joking.
And we can communicate from more than 2 miles away.
I'm not going to come up with any Dumbo comments. Get it? Anyway, weather looking pretty wet.
Look forward to brighter skies. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Good morning. It's still looking very wet for many parts of England over the next few days. Some heavy and thundery downpours and some flashes of lightning are likely for today. Whereas further north and west, it's looking fine. The best of the weather across much of Scotland, Northern Ireland, the Republic and the north and west of England and Wales for this afternoon. In fact, this morning, these areas are generally starting off dry and bright. It is a chilly start, though. Even a ground frost in some rural spots of the north. Otherwise, it's very wet with cloudy skies and spells of heavy rain across many parts of the East Midlands, central, southern and eastern England. Particularly heavy downpours at the moment down towards parts of the southeast, and continuing that way into this afternoon. The heaviest of the rain with some thunderstorms likely across the eastern parts of Norfolk, Suffolk, down towards Essex and Kent, and there may be some flashes of lightning across these areas too. So there is a risk of some of those torrential downpours leading to some localised flooding. But for the north and west of England, the west of Wales, Ireland, Northern Ireland, Scotland, mainly dry and sunny.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Still to come on the programme for you this morning as the government apologises for failing rape victims. We'll be speaking to the Victims Commissioner for England and Wales. Lib Dems have won a historic by-election victory from the Conservatives. Sarah Green overturned a majority of more than 16,000 in Chesham and Amersham in Buckinghamshire, a seat which has been held by the Tories since 1974. I asked the Police and Crime Minister, Kit Malthouse, how things went so terribly wrong for the Tories.
It's tough and disappointing, as I say. We would have hoped for a better result. Can't pretend anything otherwise. But we've seen this by-election phenomenon in the past. Our job now is to win back the trust of the people in that lovely part of Buckinghamshire and make sure at the next opportunity we resoundingly win it back.
Leader Ed Davey with us now. Proper kicking. What happened?
Well, I think this will send shockwaves through the British political system. This was Liberal Democrat victory is one of our best ever by-election victories, and if it was repeated across the south of England, literally dozens of Conservative MPs would lose their seats to the Liberal Democrats. And, we were finding on the doorstep, and I came here 16 times, I talked to hundreds of people, we were finding they've been taken for granted. They feel that the Conservative Party isn't listening to them. Many of them aren't very happy with Boris Johnson. And I think in areas like this, it's really clear that it's the Liberal Democrats who can beat the Conservatives. And boy, did we do that last night.
You certainly did. You absolutely trounced some 30-point swing. But we both know, we've both been in politics a long time, and that's very rarely replicated in a general election.
Well, first of all, it was a huge swing. I mean, people talked about Hartlepool being a big swing. This was more than almost double Hartlepool's swing to us. So this is absolutely huge. And I think people will need to take notice of this. But also, it actually builds on a trend too. In the local elections in the south of England, in places like Oxfordshire, Cambridgeshire, Hertfordshire, Surrey, Wiltshire, Liberal Democrats made quite big gains off the Conservatives. So this is part of a trend. And I've been pointing out to people that everyone's talking about the red wall in the north. They should think about the blue wall in the south. And it's that blue wall that Liberal Democrats breached last night. We can knock it down in the south with Liberal Democrats taking lots of seats off the Conservatives. I think there's been a growing swell towards us in these sorts of areas. And so last night, while it was, I have to say, it was much better than I had expected, it was part of that trend where Liberal Democrats are beating Conservatives across the south.
It's a yellow brick in a blue wall at this stage. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, Mr. Davey. But what I would like to ask you is whether you entered into a pact with Labour in order to trounce the Tories last night.
No. We campaigned on Liberal Democrat policies. We campaigned on our strong environmental record, our desire to make sure that planning policy, for example, was a big issue here, is led by the community, by people who have a voice, rather than the Conservatives' propositions, which is to take power away from people and give it to developers. Liberal Democrats believe we need more affordable homes, greener homes. We need more homes for our young people. But the planning reforms being put forward by the Conservatives would, as Theresa May said, result in the wrong homes in the wrong places. So, that planning reforms then linked to our strong environmental campaigning, I think is what tilted the balance for many Conservative voters. Because there were many voters who'd always voted Conservative, but last night they voted Liberal Democrat. And I think there's a trend growing there. So there may be one yellow brick in the wall as of last night. There's many more to follow.
What's wrong with a Lib-Lab pact ahead of the next general election? The Tories have, if one looks back, I was looking back earlier on this morning about how many times the Conservatives have been in power as opposed to any other party. They trounce all the rest. So although you're having your moment of glory today, what's wrong with having a Lib-Lab pact in order to be a better opposition to the government?
Well, very different parties. Liberal Democrats want a fairer, greener, more caring country, but Liberal Democrats are mainly fighting the Conservatives. So in the south of England, where we're particularly strong in parts of London, actually in parts of some of the suburbs, in places like Manchester, places like Hazel Grove, Cheadle, it's the Liberal Democrats who are competing against the Conservatives, and Labour are not very strong there, so it really wouldn't help. Liberal Democrats, I believe, are recovering. We are showing, as a result of last night, that we are the ones to beat the Conservatives in so many areas. And, you know, our message of campaigning and talking to people, you know, we're great campaigners, we're great community politicians, and because we listen to people, they do feel that we respond to their concerns in the way that Conservatives increasingly aren't. I think many people, certainly in Cheshire and Amersham, but I think across the south of England, feel the Conservatives have almost forgotten them, take them for granted. They feel ignored by them, and Liberal Democrats are filling that vacuum.
So, Ed, how concerned are you about a story on the front page of the Times this morning that says 2,500 VIPs are going to be allowed to come to the United Kingdom without having to quarantine from UEFA and FIFA to take part or witness, watch, spectate on the Euro 2020s? How can that be fair?
Although I haven't read the story, from what you just said, it does not sound fair at all. And, you know, it's part of the way this Conservative government operates. There's one rule for their friends, another rule for the rest of us. You know, we saw that with Dominic Cummings, didn't we, during the pandemic, who broke all the rules and didn't pay the price. And, you know, so often with this Conservative government, if you're friendly with them, you get special favours. That is not the way to do politics. And actually, here in Cheshire and Amersham, we did see a number of people really cross with Boris Johnson, feel that he and his government aren't just out of touch, but they're just listening to developers who give them lots of money. They're listening to the people who got huge amounts of money through contracts during the pandemic. There's a dissatisfaction with Boris Johnson, which I don't think the polls have yet picked up, but we were picking up here on the doorsteps in Cheshire and Amersham. And I think that's one of the reasons why Liberal Democrats had such a good victory here.
Fantastic win for you by any measure, Sir Ed. What you're going to have is your celebratory breakfast. 3 shredded wheat?
I haven't thought about breakfast. I've been talking to people in the media. But you know, we're going to have a celebration, obviously, because it's such a big win. You know, it's not often that you get a 30% swing. I mean, I've got to look at the history books. I think it's the biggest ever Liberal Democrat by-election victory, which I think speaks volumes. I think it says that, you know, where we go out and campaign, I came here 16 times to this by-election, talked to hundreds of people, where we talk to people, people listen to us, like our message, and see how different we are from the Conservatives. And I think we're going to keep plugging away with our message of a fairer, greener, more caring country. We're going to be plugging away at saying, look, you know, if you want the homes to be affordable, to be green, and the homes for young people, there's a different approach from the Conservatives. And I think messages like that in areas like this will resonate, and I think Liberal Democrats can win many, many more seats off the Conservatives.
See, I was just looking for a flippant one-liner, but you were a politician right through to the tape, weren't you, Sir Ed? Thanks very much indeed for joining us this morning. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Also this morning, the Home Secretary and Justice Secretary say they are ashamed after a government report found that thousands of rape victims were being failed by the criminal justice system. Earlier on the programme, the Crime and Policing Minister, Kit Malthouse, expressed his regret at the findings.
Well, it's obviously a shocker. I mean, as we've said in the report and on the media and elsewhere, you know, it's a source of deep regret and shame that the numbers have dropped so significantly over the last few years. The reasons for that are complicated. I understand, you know, groups are naturally impatient, and we're very sorry for what's happened over the last few years. They're naturally impatient for change. You know, my experience tells me, after whatever 20 years in public policy delivery, that actually building from a strong base, starting with a focused set of proposals, is most likely to get us change in the short term.
Well, the Victims Commissioner for England and Wales, Dame Vera Baird, is joining us now. Dame Vera, thank you for joining us. What's your response to the report?
It's underwhelming, I'm afraid. I'm pleased that the ministers have apologised. I think it will cut no ice with women and men whose cases have been dropped, because as ministers now apologise for, the criminal justice system has truly been disregarding complainants until they prove that in some way they're worthy of support. They're now told to, the police and the CPS are now told to focus on the defendant, and it's absolutely ridiculous that they have to be told that at this time. But it is good that they are being told that. So it's underwhelming. Many opportunities in it are missed. I am pleased that they are directing the police in the way that I've described. I'm pleased that they're going to have a close look at the quality of what the CPS have been doing to make sure we get more cases, but they are the right quality cases. So the apology is there, in my view, to show an intent that they will make change. We will drive that change as best we can. If we don't get it, well, where will people be who've apologised for something and not put it right?
Our viewers this morning will not believe this figure. 99.4% of cases of alleged rape go without charge. How on earth can that be?
It represents a wholesale failure of rape complainants. There is very clear evidence in this rape review and the documents behind it that what happens when someone complains of rape is they cease to be a respected member of the public and become a suspiciously dodgy, probably tart-like person who has to be scrutinised through and through and through before the police and the CPS will put faith in them and take their case to court. That is appalling. It is rape myths and stereotypes of an ancient kind, which should have no truck in professional decision-making, which have fed in, particularly over the last 5 years, since the Crown Prosecution Service scrapped something called the merits-based approach to prosecution. Why would you drop something that is merits-based and leave all of the myths and stereotypes to come in? I think what the police and the CPS do is they think, is there something here that might make a jury riddled with prejudices decide against the complainant? If so, we're not going to take a chance because it's our reputation at stake taking wrong cases. That, I think, is in essence what the ministers have apologised for and have to have apologised for, even though this has been an insider inquiry. And it would have had a lot more strength to it if it had been done independently and not by the very people who've caused the problem in the first place. Nonetheless, it becomes clear that that has been the approach and it has radically to change. Shifting culture has to start now.
Dame Vera, I specifically put to the policing minister about one of those planks of criticism that you were alluding to there, which is that when a victim complains, her phone or his phone is taken off them and it is scrutinised, and it's called an electronic strip search, in inverted commas. The minister said that is going to continue, albeit with some safeguards, because that's hugely important gathering of evidence. Why is it not?
I don't say that in some cases there won't be important evidence, both for the prosecution and arguably for the defence, on somebody's phone. But there is a research document that underpins this rape review in which the CPS can be seen saying, are quoted saying, we want every bit of download from the phones, every bit of third-party material we can possibly get before we even consider a charge in a rape case. That is there on page 47 in the version I have. Now, that attitude means that even when, for instance, it's a stranger rape, they still demand an excessive amount of phone intrusion and things like health notes, things like school reports, before they'll even consider a charge. That has nothing to do with finding evidence and everything to do with what I've described, which is really screening the complainant for credibility. In one of the proposals to change how policing is done that features in this rape review, academics referred in one police force to the rape investigation section as a complainant credibility section. And if you didn't pass that, even if there was very powerful evidence, for instance, in one or two cases, people who've been raped email and complain to their complainant if it's been part, to their defendant if it's been part of a relationship. And there have been cases where the person has emailed back and apologized for a rape. And still, if you can't get over that credibility barrier for the complainant, the police never get to look at the behavior of the defendant. So phones, we need independent legal advice, I'm afraid, to ensure that only what is relevant to evidence is taken off phones and people are not having all of their documentation, all of their privacy taken away, as well, of course, as the phone at the very time when they need it at its most.
Indeed. Dame Vera, thank you very much indeed. Thanks a lot. You're watching the Breakfast programme here on Sky News. Professor Green actually is coming up a little bit later on. Very much looking forward to that. Meantime, sport for you. Here's Jackie. Jackie, good morning.
Good morning. Guess what we're going to be talking about this morning, Kay? Yes, it is the oldest international fixture in football.
This sports bulletin is brought to you by Vitality, committed to getting 100 million people 20% more active by 2025.
The other word that I always remember you referring to in team talks was risk.
You're down 1-0 with 15 minutes to go. What's the point in sitting with your back four, your regular midfield and two strikers? What's the point in it? The risk is shove people in the box because the other team react to that. You shove 3 and 4 in the box, get the ball in there. That's the risk because you can lose the breakaway, the counter-attack quite easily. And we lost games that way.
You were offended by, it felt to me like you were offended by the club being beaten by Liverpool or City at any level, and it made you angry. And the build-up to those games, your face was more, a little bit like it is now. Was it a dislike of you? Was it the rivalry? What was it that made you feel that way? Because it was just different in the club.
It's my respect to Liverpool. When I was the manager at St Mirren, I went down to Liverpool's training for a week. And I saw the intensity of their training and the consistency they had. So when I came to United and they were winning all the titles, I made that point. And it's like when I was at Aberdeen, there's only 2 clubs you need to beat in Scotland to win everything. That's Rangers and Celtic. At that time when I came to United, there's only 1 club to beat to win the league, and that's Liverpool. So that was my intention. That was what I put everything into producing a team who could beat them. Not necessarily beat them every game, but win the leagues. And I knew that if you beat Liverpool, you're on the right path.
I only recognised this properly when I became captain for that last 4 or 5 years, that you used to stand outside the dressing room door and the captain couldn't go out past you until you were there. Every single match. You make sure you... Why did... it's this influence over referees, this looking down the corridor, it's the looking at the away team. What was the reason you stood outside that door so that everybody could see you? Was it for your own team or was it for the others down the corridor?
No, for their own team.
Okay.
My own team. But there was one occasion, I don't know if you remember this, but we were down 3-0 to Tottenham, at Tottenham. And I never said a word in the dressing room. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
I sat in the radiator and it was bloody burning hot too. And I says...
I do remember actually now.
Next goal's the winner. That's what I said. And I went to the door and Teddy Sheringham, who had played with us, of course, was their captain. And he came out to the door and looked at me and turned and said to his players, don't let them score early. We scored in the first minute. Remember that?
Yeah.
I thought that killed him with Teddy having to say that to them. Because I looked at him, you know, and they looked at me. And I just, come on, we can win this. It's a funny game.
The year was 1996 and England mania was sweeping the nation. They weren't buying the Spice Girls. There was another record flying off the shelves and a whole nation was behind one man and his team. Fast forward 25 years and at the home of football, I'm about to take on the biggest challenge of my life. My mission is simple. I've got just 7 days to speak to all 22 of Terry's boys, get my Euro 96 shirt signed and get them
committed to getting 100 million people 20% more active by 2025.
And I think Wales are playing tomorrow, are they, against Italy? I think I'm right in saying that. We're speaking to the First Minister now. Wales delaying the further easing of its COVID-19 restrictions for 4 weeks. The country's seen a spike in cases of the Delta variant in recent weeks, with more than 4 out of 5 new cases comprising of the new variant. As I said, Mark Drakeford is with us. How concerned are you with these numbers? Mr. Drakeford, good morning.
Good morning. Well, they are concerning numbers. We now believe the new Delta variant is in every part of Wales. and numbers are rising in the community, not just in specific settings. All of that means that we need to pause, to collect more data on the extent to which the new variant will lead to hospitalisations in Wales, and to give us the opportunity to vaccinate over 500,000 more people in Wales, particularly with second doses, and that will rise the level of defence we have against this latest coronavirus threat.
Although I think I'm right in saying, am I, First Minister, that you're not making it compulsory for care staff to get the vaccine, unlike in England, it would appear. Why is that?
Because we already have very high levels of take-up of the vaccination amongst care home staff, and we've done that by persuasion and by conversation and voluntarily. So well over 90% of our care home staff have had a first dose, and nearly 90% have had the second dose. So we're pressing ahead to try and make sure we have those remaining staff members offered the vaccine, taking up the vaccine. But if you can do it voluntarily, then I think that is a much stronger basis from which to go on persuading people to do the right thing.
But if they choose not to have a vaccine, they don't have to, even though they're working with the vulnerable and elderly.
Well, I certainly think that they ought to. That's definitely our position here. But there is a very big step taken when you move into compulsion. Our belief is that actually it would undermine our programme in Wales, which has been the most successful in the United Kingdom, and has been done on the basis of people knowing that when they come forward for vaccination, they are helping themselves, of course, but they're helping everybody else as well. And that sense of voluntary participation in the programme is very important to us and has been part of our success.
May I ask you about your plans on music venues? You want them to operate, I believe, on the same basis as hospitality venues. What does that actually look like in practice?
Well, it means that you can only do these things in carefully regulated and controlled settings where there's always somebody in charge to make sure that people are being kept safe, but where it will be possible for music to be played and comedy gigs to be carried out where people are socially distanced, carefully supervised, and able to do it in a way that keeps performers and the audience safe. But nevertheless, an important step ahead in Wales for those small venues that rely on being able to have live events of that sort.
We heard from the policing minister, I'm not sure whether you heard Kit Malthouse at the start of the programme this morning, talking about the rape review, which also covers Wales. What particular concerns do you have for the people of Wales?
Well, we share the same concerns that you will have heard from others, that when prosecution rates are as low as they have been, that it undermines confidence in the system, and particularly it undermines the confidence of victims to come forward, tell their story and go through what is inevitably a very distressing experience for them. If they think that that distressing experience doesn't have an outcome that is commensurate with what they have gone through, then the whole system is undermined. So we certainly hope that the measures that the UK government are announcing will be effective in reversing the trends of recent times.
If I can end on a fun note, First Minister, please. I'm not sure, are you a football fan?
Certainly, yes.
Excellent.
You
now,
have to be in Wales.
you're playing Italy, aren't you, on Sunday? Italy are on fire at the moment. How confident are you?
Well, a very big game for us, of course, against one of the big teams across Europe. But it'll be a very good experience for the Welsh team as we hope they progress into the knockout stages of the competition, because those will be the sort of games you face all the time, as we did back in 2016, of course, so successfully.
And you're happy that 2,500 UEFA, FIFA representatives, VIPs, as we're going to call them for short, are going to be allowed into the United Kingdom without any need for quarantining?
Well, you know, anything we do of that sort does add to the risk, but I know that the authorities will have been planning carefully together to make sure that those risks are minimised. And this is a huge tournament, isn't it? Not just here in Wales, where it certainly is huge, but across the whole of Europe, and making sure that it can be done in a way that allows the whole of Europe to take the interest there will be in it, I'm sure that that is being very carefully thought through and planned.
OK, I'm going to put you on the spot before I let you go. Full-time result for tonight's game, England-Scotland. What do you think?
Oh, way, way above my pay grade, and I'll give you a proper politician's answer and hope that it'll be a draw.
OK, and I'm going to push you as a presenter who interviews politicians all the time, and I need an answer more than a draw.
OK, in that case, I think it's time for Scotland to show what they can do in this competition.
Oh, OK, controversial. It's good to talk to you. Thank you, Mr. Drakeford. Thank you. Yeah, Gareth Southgate not going to Wales on his holidays anymore. Quick look at the weather for you now. Here's Naz.
Morning. It's looking pretty wet for that game as well, I'm afraid. There are heavy and thundery downpours likely throughout today across many central, southern and eastern parts of England.
Look forward to brighter skies. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.